Number 40, Spy. Parody in film has been in a bit of a slump lately, with many so-called send-ups bringing nothing more to the table than an attempt to reference something that's currently popular and make the most obvious joke about it. But parody used to dig into the genre and highlight the inconsistencies and absurdities that the audience noticed but never gave much serious thought. So I was really hoping that this would be that kind of movie. And for the most part, it is. The flashy cars, high-tech gadgets, and exotic locales of Bond fame are imitated and twisted to suit the comedic sensibilities of the movie at hand. But a larger part of this film is the wonderfully written character at its center. Melissa McCarthy is given another plum role to play around with, and she takes full advantage of the opportunity. She brings a three-dimensional take to the character and creates a protagonist who's likable and intelligent, and her quirks are endearing instead of grating on my every nerve like so many similar characters. A solid script gives a talented cast some great comedic material, and the against-type casting adds an element of fun. Jude Law proves himself a capable, funny man, Jason Statham is having the time of his life poking fun at his intense on-screen persona, and Rose Byrne is resplendent as the film's antagonist who revels in being bad. But the show is really McCarthy's, and she shows once again why she's the premier actress in comedy these days. Some parts may feel familiar, but there's enough originality to make this a rewarding viewing experience. Number 39, The Hunger Games Mockingjay Part 2. So Mockingjay Part 1 was a huge disappointment. I was really worried that the conclusion was going to be more of the same, which would be a real shame because the first two films were excellent. But fortunately, the final installment pulled it together and gave a proper send-off to one of the finest protagonists in recent memory. The major complaint about Part 1 was the obvious padding to allow for the division of the book into two movies, and while there is a little of that here too, there is a significant increase in actual plot content. Some of the most intense sequences in an already shocking series take place here, some of them bordering on gruesome, but all in service of the story. One such sequence taking place largely in the dark, prefaced with one of the most uncomfortably lengthy silent build-ups imaginable, is executed to perfection, as are most of the action sequences, though they are spaced out considerably. But as is the case in all of these films, the strength of Jennifer Lawrence's performance carries the movie through the duller moments. She's also tasked with delivering some of the most emotional scenes to date, and of course she handles them with ease. There's tragically little of either Woody Harrelson or Elizabeth Banks, who are some of my favorite characters, and I would have liked to see a little more of them. But Donald Sutherland is given some truly great moments and completes a wonderfully consistent performance as a character that wouldn't have succeeded without his insight. In the end, it's far from perfect, but still a satisfying denouement to one of the best series of its kind. Number 38, The Stanford Prison Experiment. One of the most famous studies in psychology and sociology, the Stanford Prison Experiment has already been given the big screen treatment in a wildly misguided effort called The Experiment. The film failed due to its attempt to make the proceedings cinematic when the real fascination with this study comes from the fact that this is a true story, so I was excited for the facts-based approach of this version, and this creative decision pays off in numerous ways. Knowing that most of what you're seeing actually happened, it makes all the more shocking and terrifying to imagine that sane human beings could actually behave so outrageously. The film drives home just how transformative the prison system can be to both the inmates and the guards, even though none of the men involved in this study had ever been either of those things. This movie serves as a great showcase for some of the finest young actors working today, especially Ezra Miller, who conveys the extreme stress that quickly took hold of the subjects, and Ty Sheridan, who brilliantly understates the hopelessness that set in among the prisoners. Michael Angarano is particularly fun to watch as a guard who affects the voice and mannerisms of Strother Martin's prison captain from Cool Hand Luke, and takes sadistic pleasure in punitive action against the inmates. And veteran actor Billy Crudup does more of the great work I've come to expect from him as the Stanford professor who set up the experiment and is desperately trying to keep it from going off the rails. One of the more difficult films to watch this year, but wildly rewarding if you can stomach it. Number 37, Love and Mercy. Musician biopics are a hot commodity in Hollywood. They generally lend themselves to awards consideration, the name recognition helps with ticket sales, and the best musicians are usually tortured artists with deep personal problems, which makes for good drama and a good look behind the curtain feel. If you doubt this, you should know that this year alone we got 4 documentaries about 3 different musicians who all died at the age of 27. Now the quality of these biopics runs the gamut from multi-Oscar winners to titles that actors would give anything to have removed from their resumes. But the best of them all have one thing in common. They don't present a rose-colored view of their subjects. The life of the artist is shown, warts and all, and few musicians' lives have as many warts as Brian Wilson. A sufferer of paranoid schizophrenia, the effect of which was exacerbated by the overuse of psychedelic drugs, Wilson created some of the most renowned music of the 20th century with the Beach Boys, in spite of his illness, until a mental breakdown caused him to become a recluse, at one point not leaving his bed for several years. The film puts all of this out in the open and doesn't try to glamorize mental illness to make it easier for the audience to take. The story is pretty standard biopic fare, but it makes itself stand out by alternating between the time surrounding the creation of the Beach Boys' magnum opus, Pet Sounds, and the time just after the bed years, when Wilson was being manipulated by a lecherous agent. Paul Dano is in typical fine form as the younger Wilson and deserves every nomination coming his way. John Cusack is given his meatiest role in years and goes places I've never seen him go as an actor, playing the gut-wrenching older version of Brian Wilson. Strong supporting work from Elizabeth Banks and Paul Giamatti makes this essential viewing for Beach Boys fans and a film to strongly consider for everyone else. Number 36, Predestination. If you're looking for new movies to watch that you've never heard of before, but want to make sure that it's something you'll likely enjoy, a great way to start is just to pick an actor that you usually like and take a closer look at their filmography. If something stands out to you, give it a chance. You might just uncover a hidden gem like I did with this film. I found this one while researching Ethan Hawke's work, still buzzing from his performance in Boyhood. Predestination makes use of the time travel plot device to create a mind-bending tale of crime-fighting temporal agent, think Time Cop, but with less leg splits, diverging from his mission to help someone with a complicated past attempt to right a wrong done to them. But there's so much more going on than meets the eye, and certainly more than would ever come to mind. And the film never gets so heady that it forgets about the heart, which is all too important in raising the stakes and investing us in the few characters that there are. As with most time travel movies, there is a twist ending that will have you puzzling over, as the title suggests, whether or not there is such a thing as destiny and just how powerful it is if it does exist. Now, I watched this because of Ethan Hawke, who delivers as expected, but Sarah Snook owns this film. She's asked to cover more range than almost any other actress this year. You'll get it when you watch this, and she hits it out of the park. Watch it with friends, if only for the post-movie time travel paradox debate. Number 35, What We Do in the Shadows. I think I speak for everyone when I say that we have a slight case of vampire fatigue. It's not as bad as the relentless pounding zombie headache we're feeling, but the success of Twilight flooded the market with imitators, which enraged vampire purists who responded with serious takes on the genre that broke little from established formula and emulated classic films, essentially negating their own existence. So a mockumentary-style comedy from the people behind Flight of the Conchords is an oasis in a vast and seemingly endless desert, though the lack of demand for vampire movies almost kept this film from getting a US theatrical release. Thankfully, a crowdfunding campaign allowed me to see this in a theater. The mockumentary style lends itself well to the dry humor that's indicative of British, Aussie, and Kiwi comedies, and allows for improvisation by some very talented actors. The scripted moments are just as funny and show just how much care went into this project. This also shows in the film's more serious moments, which make the style all the more effective, as it feels like a real glimpse into the lives of creatures trying to exist in an inhospitable world. The film doesn't use its designation as a comedy as an excuse to shy away from the gore, instead using blood spray to great comedic effect and making the gruesome mauling of a human character a deeply emotional moment and a stark reminder of the consequences of the seemingly desirable life of an immortal being. Brilliantly conceived and lovingly executed, this is a must for vampire fanatics or fans of well-made genre mashups. Number 34, Kung Fury. I can't really talk at length about this because it's only 30 minutes long and it delivers exactly what it promises. Non-stop action steeped in over-the-top action style parody. Hilariously aping the hallmarks of low-budget 80s action films, it's as much love letter as it is send-up. Cheesy one-liners, invincible protagonists, ultra-macho testosterone-drenched fistfights, scores of kicks and punches to the faces of disposable henchmen. It's all here and it asks nothing of you other than your time. There's no complicated, indecipherable plot that requires you to use your brain. It's the classic hero's journey back in time to kill Hitler to prevent him from traveling forward in time and unleashing an army of killer arcade machines on 1980s Miami. Practically Shakespearean if you don't think too hard about it. There isn't much else I can say about Kung Fury except that it's a great reminder that it doesn't matter how silly something is. If it speaks to you and it inspires you to try something new or just entertains you, then it has value, and no one can take that away from you. Plus, who knows, maybe you'll give it your own spin one day and start the cycle of inspiration all over again. More than worth half an hour of your time, and only flawed in that it will truly leave you wanting, nay, demanding more. Number 33, Paper Towns. Now I know what you're thinking. Scott, how did you learn to read minds? Which is a great question. I came across an old gypsy woman one day begging for change. I didn't have any, so I walked into a thrift shop to break a 20, and saw a series of cassette tapes labeled The Modern Mind Reader, Being Telepathically Literate in Today's World, 1987 edition. So I bought them and got so excited about it that I totally forgot about the gypsy woman, which is probably why my face always itches now. But that's beside the point. You're also thinking, Scott, can you really review this movie objectively? And the answer is no, but also I don't have to. This is my list. I can do what I want here. I'm free from the shackles of society. Impunity, thy name is Scott! Paper Towns is by and large faithful to its source material. It diverges in a few minor ways that have little effect on the film's impact. The novel's main theme of imagining others complexly and refraining from making others out to be more than just a person is preserved at the expense of more narratively compelling romance or adventure story. This isn't a film about big, earth-shattering ideas, it's about simple introspection and personal connection. The simplicity is reflected in the film as a whole. The more exciting scenes are funny and entertaining, but this movie's identity is in the interactions between its characters, revealing a core of thoughtfulness that's painfully absent from many movies aimed at teens. Probably more appealing to younger audiences, but a worthwhile experience for anyone willing to engage with it. Special bonus, stay through the credits to hear a song by the Mountain Goats that was previously only released in Japan. This is not a joke. It is also not a suggestion. Stay. My face itches. Number 32, The Walk. I have sort of a weird knee-jerk reaction to seeing the promotional materials and trailers for a film pushing the 3D aspect. As soon as I hear a trailer voice tell me to see it in real D 3D October 1st, I just sort of assume that the film is bad. Like the action wasn't very exciting, so it was crudely converted in post-production. And if it was shot in 3D, I just know it's going to have lots of exaggerated motion aimed directly into the camera and CGI items flying right at the lens. This isn't a good reaction to have because some of these movies are really quite good. And film is a visual medium, so anything that's testing those boundaries is worth consideration, so I can't be upset that this movie's entire advertising campaign centered around the 3D. And honestly, this is one of the best uses of 3D technology I've ever seen. The dizzying heights pop in such a way that it's impossible not to get sucked into the action, the gimmicks are kept to a minimum, and the film doesn't rely solely on the spectacle for entertainment. There are moments of pure character development and genuine comedy. The middle portion has a slick heist feel that serves as a nice break from the decidedly repetitive tightrope walking scenes, but the final heart-stopping walk is still the coup de grace of this visual masterwork. Some of the dialogue is cliched and largely negated by the narration, which is a bit awkward itself at times, though Joseph Gordon-Levitt managed to carry the audience through these missteps with sheer charisma. If you get the chance to see this in 3D, take it. Otherwise, keep this in mind if you're in the mood for some lighter action. Number 31, Ant-Man. Marvel has pulled off quite an impressive feat, creating a vast universe of interconnected movies that somehow keep succeeding. Everyone has expected Marvel to just fall flat on their faces in at least one film in the MCU, but it just hasn't happened yet. A lot of people thought that this was the one that would bomb, but surprisingly, Ant-Man really isn't even the worst film in the cinematic universe to date. It's far from perfect, but it's still pretty good. And given the turmoil surrounding the production of this movie, with director Edgar Wright leaving the project over creative differences with the producers, it's a wonder this film was made at all. But some smart casting decisions and a heist genre story makes for entertaining action and enough comedy to satisfy most moviegoers. The scenes of Paul Rudd first using the suit to shrink himself are particularly inventive and just exciting to watch. And for a film so reliant on CGI, it actually looks quite good. This is far from the strongest script in Marvel history, with Edgar Wright still getting credit for his writing, though it passed through several other screenwriters, but the performances carry the plot along nicely. Corey Stoll is having the time of his life as the villain, Michael Douglas handles the occasionally silly dialogue by just committing to it like a true veteran, and Evangeline Lilly is an excellent foil for Paul Rudd's comedic sensibilities. It won't be a movie we're still talking about decades from now, but it's just good fun that's definitely worth your time.